Hey there, and thank you for joining us for the third segment of episode 4, Teacher Perspectives within Back to School 2020. Don't forget, if you like what you hear, feel free to subscribe and like the video below. We'll go ahead and jump right on in, where Charlie and Alejandra are going to continue the conversation around their experience in virtual learning.
So, Charlie, you were, talking about how, the flexibility with the students and just being honest with them. Do you find that the difference between what we're doing to ensure that, you're connecting social and emotionally with the students, how are you all taking care of each other as teachers?
We're checking in on each other a lot and talking a lot. I do think when we meet, Mondays are actually our meeting days. So we don't meet with students, we meet with other teachers. So that's been helpful and healthy to talk to other adults. And for my department specifically, we do a book club, and we've been doing that since I think we went virtual in March. So that's been nice too, just keeping connected and talking about having adult conversations that you don't need to have with your students and on books that we want to read. So that's been helpful. I'm trying to instill stricter work hours. So when to finally stop checking my email, because I can't be responsive 24/7 as much as I'd love to. I just can't and shouldn't. And so I'm trying to create those stricter work boundaries so I'm not working 24 hours a day.
How about you, Alejandra? How are you maintaining the sanity?
Our fourth grade team has a chat just like all other teams do, but it's mostly business. I find myself in a bit of a pickle because I play competitive roller derby, and right now there is no roller derby. So I really just am defaulting to my old beloved weightlifting. And I think a lot of the people on my team are mostly, in some shape, way, or form athletes or, athletic. So I think that's kind of what we're mostly doing. We stay in touch and support each other by what I was saying before, just helping each other by saying hey, I have this resource. Let me pass it on over to you. I mean, one of the added bonuses about our school is the fact that, we are a Spanish dual language school, which is awesome, and we all love it. But with that comes the added price of having to make sure that whatever you make is applying the dual language strategies that we are very good at doing, but are somewhat easier, arguably, to do in person. We have these great strategies to use that we're all very comfortable with, and we can cover our walls with all of these chart papers that the kids use and interact with, but they're not here. So how do we find creative ways to transfer those online? And honestly, I think that's really where we're helping each other out, because once one of us cracks that code, we're like, I got this. Check this thing out, and or this solution that I have to this impasse at the moment. And that's been really, really helpful.
You mentioned the word solution. What do you, if you had, I call it the magic wand, right? If you had the magic wand to make learning for your students a little bit easier in this time right now, what would that be? What's that missing? Gosh, if we just had this technological tool, or if we just had the capacity of X, what would that be? Other than the 24 hours that Charlie was talking about.
I don't think, honestly, that there is a tool. I think there are multiple layers. So one thing that I would love to see is the type of parental involvement where the parents are supporting the not through those bazillion clicks that are required to get to whatever assignment, or link their Google Classroom through Canvas, or sorry, not Google Classroom, a Google document, whatever, through Canvas, which is our online learning platform. Mm-hmm. That would be really great. But realistically, if you were to ask me what would really solve or assuage the stress, period, it would be a much deeper issue regarding standards-based instruction and curriculum. When push comes to shove, and I can nerd out here as hard as you want me to, the fact that we are creating this concept, this fear of falling behind, which, you know, historically has not really been around that much. Thanks to, you know, we can refer to A Nation at Risk, that wonderful report. I think we need to really observe what we consider behind, how we define behind, and what we continue to define behind as, because right now, the only ones who are creating those definitions are us as a people, us as a nation, and that definition, or those definitions, I should say, are what is creating this immense stress, not just for our high schoolers who are having to do those AP classes, God bless, Charlie, God bless, but also for our littles who are testing and preparing to test. And I mean, you know, I want to get off my soapbox here, but that's really what I think we need to, if you gave me a magic wand and I could say, goodbye, standardized testing for till this is over, and maybe a couple years of buffer zone, and then maybe if they really want to put it back, fine, but you know, my personal opinions would be not to. That would be it. That would be the thing that I would do.
How about you, Charlie?
For me, I think my students overall are just so stressed about everything. Like, they're just so panicked. They send me emails, they're like, I'm so sorry, I can't get on Zoom, my internet crashed, or sorry, I'm late, I'm helping my sibling. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, don't stress about this. This is new to all of us. I am not going to be the teacher that's going to say, well, you're late, so you're marked absent. Good luck. You're on your own. This is new for all of us, and I'm very understanding that we're not going to be perfect. The internet is going to crash, especially last week when it was raining really hard. I was like, this might affect some of our internet. And so it's just one of those things where it's sad how stressed and anxious they are about making a mistake, when this is the one time that I'm emphasizing to make mistakes. Like, I have my first quiz with my students tomorrow, actually, and they're so stressed about it. Like, what if I fail? I'm like, then you fail, but it's one quiz out of many quizzes. It's okay. As long as you get better, if you keep failing, that's something we'll look at. But this is the time to not stress about it. We're not going to be perfect. None of this is ideal. In an ideal world, we'd be in person. So just focus on what you can control. That's what, like, I'm also reminding myself, focus on what you can control. But yeah, so I think just maybe trying to get rid of their stress and anxiety over this, because I feel it, and it it makes me sad knowing how stressed they are and how much some of these kids have on their plate. Because at high school level, some of them are working, and their bosses might say, well, if you're virtual, can you work during the day? And then I also have students who have younger siblings that they're trying to help. Or I have students that are doing a lot more things at the home, or whatever the case is. This is a time for all of us, just not just as teachers or adults, but as students, to just be okay with making mistakes.
You know, you both came on saying how, you know, going remote wasn't a big pivot for y'all. You know, it was, schools had one-to-one devices, and we've had remote learning in the U.S. for decades. You know, so it's not a new thing. It is when you have to have the masses do it, and they weren't prepared. When we talk about being prepared, what did that look like for you over the summer? And is that what helped you to kind of take the stance of, look, I can either approach this from a fear-based point, like you said, and that just heightens what's going to happen to my students, or do I look at it as, look, this is how much time I have in the day. I know the variables involved. My kids come from all sorts of backgrounds, home environments, etc. So I've got to be able to have the flexibility to be able to say, I'm just going to have to pay a little bit more attention over here, maybe not so much there. And you're assessing. And I guess where I'm going with this is, do you find that in this remote environment that you're a little more attuned to what we've been talking about for many years, and that is differentiated instruction?
I love that question. I can't even begin to tell you how much I love that question. I'm going to try to parse this answer out. I think yes, differentiated instruction would definitely be the focus. That would be the focus if it were all asynchronous, because we would have the time to plan for it. But right now, with the schedule being what it is, where we are basically on Zoom as much as we are for what is equivalent to an entire school day, the amount of activities and I guess you could say like hands-on whatever that the kids would have to complete that we usually do in the classroom, that we can just create even just by being like, let's take out a whiteboard, let's grab all these manipulatives and do whatever it is that you need to do. That's not as simple online. Not only just, again, what I was saying before about the connectivity issues, because it's go to here, click to here, open this program to get the manipulatives, or open this thing to be able to play with this thing for science observations. Whatever it might be becomes an extra task that takes more time. That puts a barrier to the type of differentiation that we're used to seeing in the classroom. But then on top of it, as the other layer, we have this, gnawing standardized thing in the background, which is where I was getting at with my previous answer. So with all these combined, the differentiation is precisely what at least I hear from, fellow coworkers, that's what we want to do, but there's just not enough time. And it's also just not like the reality, it's not the reality right now in terms of access and connectivity. But if we were living in this perfect world, absolutely, I'd make 17 million differentiated, activities so that every single kid had their own personalized, path and program. But fortunately, we have applications that are, pre-existing that our Alexandria City has purchased for us so that we can provide those to the students. But again, we're talking about connectivity, we're talking about equity, we're talking about language accessibility, we're talking about technological prior knowledge. Like, does the student even know how to use the application? And we can't sit there and help them click through everything because we're not there with them like we usually are. Again, it might be different for high school, but at least with us in elementary school, in many cases, we have to sit there and be like, okay, let me show you how to physically click on your computer to walk through these things. So I think I addressed all the aspects of your question in regards to differentiation, but in the last piece would be for the differentiation to really be able to occur within the time limit that we have, it would really require a lot of support from the parents, which again comes back to an equity issue. It's not fair to assume that all parents want the best for their children, but not all parents can provide the same amount of best in the home because they themselves didn't have that access to that equitable amount of education, to that equitable amount of you insert the blank here, but they are doing their best to provide that for their child right now. And all we can do is help them help their child.
Excellent. And that's a great spot for us to hold on until the next time that we come together. And we're going to start with Charlie and see what she has to say about differentiation at the high school level.
Hey there, good evening everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 4th episode of the Back to School Series 2020 podcast. If you want to learn more about everything Back to School 2020 and what that looks like from various perspectives, then we advise that you subscribe below and tune in weekly every Thursday at 7 p.m. We hope you enjoy and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.